What's up, everybody? What's up, everybody? It's your boy Chris. It's your boy Chris. I'm a mechanical engineer with an MBA, and I have taught finance, everybody, for over 20 years. And in this podcast, we're going to talk about a financial hero of mine named John Rockefeller. So a couple months ago, I did a podcast on the 10 richest humans to ever live. Out of everybody I did on that list and everything, one of the things I found the most impressive about John D. Rockefeller, he is the only one that I have done any research on that has actually been able to maintain his family's wealth over 100 years after his death. With that, let's get started, okay? As we talk about how John D. Rockefeller has literally protected his wealth for the last 100 years. And this is gonna be part one, everybody, of my Rockefeller series. So first, let's talk about who exactly was John D. Rockefeller, how he built his wealth, and how he built, more importantly, his generational wealth, because there's a difference between being rich and being wealthy. John Rockefeller, everybody, was born in 1839 on a farm in Richland, New York, and he was the second of 6 children. By all accounts, he grew up in a very modest working class family, but he died with an estimated net worth of everybody of over 350 to 450 billion with a B dollars. And as I stated earlier, he's the 10th wealthiest man in history to ever live. Rockefeller, everybody, he built his fortune off of the oil, the kerosene, and the gasoline industry. And at one point, get this, 90% of the gas stations in America were owned by John D. Rockefeller. Imagine how wealthy you gotta be if 90% of the charging stations in America and 90% of the gas stations in America are owned by one dude. That was John D. Rockefeller. So Rockefeller founded the Standard Oil Company in 1870, and that company ultimately became so successful that when the U.S. Supreme Court declared it was a monopoly in 1911, it was broken into 34 different companies that later became Exxon, Chevron, Amoco, ConocoPhillips, BP, and Shell, just to name a few. Rockefeller eventually at some point pivoted from the oil and the kerosene industry to gasoline for automobiles. And when he died in 1937, he gave away over 600 million with an M dollars to medicine, higher education, and philanthropic events. And in modern times, Rockefeller would have given away over 11 billion with a B dollars before his death. Now, I want to talk about the Rockefeller Trust and how John D. Rockefeller has used it to literally maintain billions of dollars in generational wealth for his family over the last 100 years. So let me give you some analogies, okay? There's a saying that says from shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves in 3 generations. There's another analogy that says my grandfather drove a camel, my father drove a car, I drive a Maserati, and my son would ride a camel. And there's also another saying that says this: the first generation is poor and makes the money. The second generation is rich and enjoys the money. The third generation squanders the money, and the fourth generation is poor again. Now, the 3 analogies that I just been saying literally pop up in every culture I've ever studied. There is some form of the saying that within 3 generations, people are poor again. And that does not matter whether you study cultures from Africa, cultures from Europe, the Arab world, or Latin America. And one of the things that is absolutely amazing to me about John D. Rockefeller, and I said this earlier, is that he created a system that has literally kept his family billionaires with a B for the last 100 plus years. So how exactly did John D. Rockefeller do it? How did the 10th richest man in history create a system where 100 years nearly after his death, over 7 generations of his family members are still full of billionaires? I'm glad you asked, everybody. The answer is simple. It's called the Rockefeller Trust. Once again, before he died, John D. Rockefeller was worth over 350 to 450 billion with a B dollars in the 1930s, and he gave away over 11 billion with the B dollars to charities before he died. So over 100 years later, the Rockefeller family still today is worth over 9 billion with a B dollars, and his wealth is literally spread over 70 different heirs. And keep in mind that Rockefeller also started Chase Bank in New York City. So the $9 billion that I'm talking about, that doesn't even take into account the billions of dollars his family has access to and that they own proprietary earnings through Chase Bank. How is it that Rockefeller's family, once again, over the last 100 years after his death, are still billionaires? And everyone, as I stated earlier, living trusts. So everyone, I want you to research the Rockefeller Trust, and I want you to read the book, What Would Rockefeller Do, okay? The amazing thing about the Rockefeller's Trust is that he created, once again, an irrevocable trust that allowed him to essentially pass and legally pass wealth from one generation to the next generation for over the last 100 years. And unlike the Vanderbilts, the Morgans, the J.C. Penney's, and the stories of the world, it is written in a way that prevented the family fortune from literally being ruined from one generation to the next by some irresponsible grandchild who had a coke problem or who was addicted to methamphetamines, who had lots of divorces, who was married to okay, or multiple failed marriages. John D. Rockefeller was intelligent enough to realize, everybody, that by the amount of wealth that he had, if he did not properly prepare his children in a way to get that wealth, it would be squandered in less than 2 or 3 generations. Once again, look no further than the Vanderbilts. So the Rockefeller method, everybody, of estate planning and living trust has essentially allowed him to pass wealth once again from one generation to the next for nearly 7 generations and counting. Please hit the notification button so you know when I drop new content. Please hit that like button. Please comment, share, subscribe. It helps the algorithm. And I thoroughly enjoy giving you guys weekly content. I drop weekly content every Sunday at 9:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Also, if you are interested in sending your child to college for free, check out my scholarship book, which can be purchased on Amazon. You can pretty much purchase it right here, where I detail how I got over $300,000 to go to undergrad for free and get my engineering degree for free. If I went to college for free, so can you. Next, I now want to talk a little about trust and why they are once again such a powerful investing option in the Rockefellers, and why they are such a powerful investing tool for you and for your family that you can use in the modern day times as well. If you listen to my podcast, everyone, you are well aware of the fact that I'm always talking about retiring early, building generational wealth, and intelligently passing that wealth down to the next generation and preparing your children so they can enjoy the wealth that you have built your entire life. Well, everyone, Rockefeller has given all of us a legitimate pathway and a roadmap about how to build multi-generational wealth by the way of setting up revocable and irrevocable trusts. For comparison's sake, over 65% of Americans have less than $4,000 saved in the bank. Less than 35% of Americans have a paid off home and $250,000 saved for retirement. And less than 24% of Americans, everybody, actually have a will in place. That is scary. According to a 2025 study that was done by Investopedia, less than 10% of Americans actually have a truly comprehensive estate plan that includes a will, a revocable trust, or an irrevocable trust. So according to that 2025 Investopedia report, 70% of Americans do not have a will. 55% of Americans have no estate planning or documents in place, and only 11% of Americans in total have a revocable or irrevocable trust. Everyone, this literally is a recipe for financial disaster, because if you die without a will, your assets go to court where the government and not your children or your family members or the people that you actually care about get the percentage of your wealth. Whereas if you die with a trust in place, your assets can be distributed to the family members faster, more privately, and most importantly, in many cases, they allow you to pass your wealth to your kids and to your grandkids with paying minimal taxes legally. I'm going to do a separate podcast on this, everybody, but trust and irrevocable trust and revocable trust are arguably the most important thing you can do to pass wealth intelligently and legally from one generation to another, to financially emancipate yourself from poverty and to build generational wealth. So how did he do it? Rockefeller created an irrevocable trust. Then when they got a certain age, he would give a very large sum of that money and take half of the money and invest it into another trust for his grandchildren, only if his kids started a trust for their kids. That way, when his grandchildren were born, they had 2 trusts. Then when his grandchildren had kids, Rockefeller would immediately give his grandchildren 50% of the money in their trust that he started for them 25 years earlier, and instruct his son to also start a trust for his grandson. And Rockefeller would just keep having his grandchildren and his great-grandchildren continue the process. Additionally, he would also give the 50% of the money into a trust for his great-grandchildren, the one that his dad started for him, the one that his grandfather started for him, and the one that John D. Rockefeller started for him. And the Rockefellers would simply repeat the process decade after decade, generation after generation, of using irrevocable trusts to pass wealth and billions with a B of dollars from one generation to the next. From Rockefeller to Rockefeller's son, to Rockefeller's grandson, to Rockefeller's great-grandson, to Rockefeller's great-great-grandson, and keep the process moving. Now, because I'm a mechanical engineer with an MBA and I've taught finance for decades and I've built billion-dollar jobs for the federal government and for private developers, I'm a math dude and I like looking at concrete numbers when I do give my examples. So let's give some concrete numbers and attach some real-world numbers to exactly how this Rockefeller Trust works, and more importantly, why you should be using it. So imagine if the day Rockefeller's son was born, he immediately put $1,000 into a trust, and every month he deposited $1,000 into his son's trust. And imagine that he got a 10% rate of return for this because he invested into low stock index funds. By the time his son turned 25, his son would have 1.2 million with the M dollars inside of that trust. Now imagine if Rockefeller's son had a son and Rockefeller became a grandfather. And Rockefeller stipulated that the only way his son would get 50% of that $1.2 million or $600,000 was if he actually started a trust for his son and for Rockefeller's grandson. That would mean Rockefeller's son at 25 years old would get paid $600,000 into his own trust and also to start a trust for his son, which is Rockefeller's grandson. Rockefeller would then take the remaining $600,000 from the trust that he started 25 years earlier for his son and deposit that immediately into his grandson's revocable trust that his son created for him. Rockefeller's grandson would now have two trusts. He would have a $601,000 trust that his grandfather started for him the day that he was born, and he would have a $1,000 trust that his father started for him as well. And once again, his father was investing same way, $1,000 into the account every month into a low-cost index fund that gave you 10% a month. If both Rockefellers continue to put $1,000 a month into both accounts at 10%, that would mean, once again, John D. Rockefeller's grandson would have two trusts. And by the time Rockefeller's grandson turned 25, he would have $7.8 million with an M dollars waiting for him in that trust. And that's because his grandfather started one 25 years earlier for him for the day that he was born. And he would also have $600,000 waiting for him in that trust that his biological father started for him also 25 years earlier. Now let's say that the grandson also had a son at 25 and he started a trust for his son the day he was born and put $1,000 into it and also invested $1,000 a month into the stocks that averaged 10%. And let's say the boy's grandfather, the great-grandfather, also rolled 50% of the assets from their trust that they started for their kids as well into this separate trust. That would mean the great-grandson, the third generation, would now have three trusts. He would have the trust that his great-grandfather started for him, John D. Rockefeller. He had the trust that his grandfather started for him. And he would have the trust that his father started for him. And the day the great-grandson turned 25, he would also start a trust for his son. By the time the great-grandson was born, he would immediately receive a $601,000 trust from his father, a $7.8 million trust from his grandfather, and a staggering $43.5 million trust from his great-grandfather, John D. Rockefeller. This is the power of compound interest, and this is the power of the Rockefeller or the irrevocable trusts. And the thing about it is absolutely harnesses the power of compound interest literally over a 100-year period, which is exactly what Rockefeller has been doing. I'm going to quickly talk about it. I'm going to film an entirely separate podcast on this, but these are some of the benefits, everybody, of an irrevocable trust. Firstly, with an irrevocable trust, it hides your assets by placing them inside of a legal shield, which means if you get sued or you get remarried, your next spouse can't have access to them. With the irrevocable trust, you no longer own the assets, which means you can't get taxed on them by the federal government. This fact alone can save you millions of the M dollars in estate taxes. And with the irrevocable trust, you can set strict rules and maintain strict control over who gets them. For instance, Shaquille O'Neal, yes, that's Shaquille O'Neal, Shaq, the basketball player to play for the Lakers. He has stipulated in his children's irrevocable trust that they have to be 28 years old and have a master's degree to have access to his hundreds of millions and possibly billions of dollars. Everyone, this is how you build generational wealth. Rockefeller is literally setting a standard and an example about how you can go about doing that. And everyone, this is the reason why I love capitalism. These are the type of tools that you have that are available to you. Lastly, everybody, I want to give a shout out to Killer Solutions. They're one of my sponsors. If you need digital marketing, website development, something to essentially edit your YouTube videos, they're the best in the business, meeting all of your digital needs. Second, I want you to check out this video right here. I'll talk about the Rockefeller Trust 101 and essentially how John D. Rockefeller once again built billions of dollars, and more importantly, how he passed up billions of dollars from himself to his great-great-great-great-great-grandchildren, okay? This channel, Finance Patient, is all about making money. It's all about saving money. It's all about building generational wealth. It's all about financially emancipating yourself from generational poverty. On this channel, everybody, I give you a 6-figure MBA level of investing knowledge for free. Please check out my content on a weekly basis. You can book a one-on-one session with me for free. Also, I am not giving financial advice in this channel. You must make responsible decisions based on the thorough, independent research that you do for yourself. Lastly, check out my website, www.therealfinancialpatient.com. Check out my Instagram, @thereal_financialpatient. Check out my Spotify Financialpatient, my TikTok Financialpatient, and check out my Facebook page, Financialpatient, as well. And check out my financial blog as well, Financialpatient. When I talk about HSAs, the 4% rule, real estate investment trust, and I go into deeper detail about crypto, forex, and stuff like that, okay? Hit the notification button as well, everybody. Please like, please comment, please share, please subscribe. It's your boy Chris. I'm out. Peace.